Okay, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Health Innovation Pavilion. This is another fantastic session. Today we're going to hear from the Innovators Network Showcase. This is going to be a wonderful session. You know, I think this is well known to everyone here. Health technology is not coming, it's here. And I think what we're learning about today and throughout this week is how we integrate that both as patients, as individuals, in our practices. Today we're certainly going to hear a lot of that. I must say that this area, as I've been mentioning, has been quite active. This week we've learned a lot about health tech. We've had health tech competitions. We've learned about advancing healthcare through partnerships with tech. We've also had some applications, of course, with AI and some competitions, I'm told, yesterday with AI. So a lot of vibrancy and a lot of enthusiasm here. You know, today what we're going to do is explore groundbreaking health technology innovations from those that are members of the CHTI's Innovation Network. They're going to showcase the latest advancements, some exciting products that are really shaping the future of cardiovascular and brain health. Some of these products are diverse and they can have many applications for health and in different environments. We're going to hear about wearables from personal ECGs and EEGs to novel echo and stethoscope-like projects, to advancing hospital monitoring. So really a spectrum of different products and technologies will be quite exciting. You are sure in for a treat. Let me organize how today's gonna go. Each of our presenters will come up and introduce themselves, have roughly 6-7 minutes, as I'm told. And then if you have questions, please hold them. We're not gonna take them between. We have these two tables set up. I do wanna thank our moderators. At table one, we have Sunil Saith, and we also have Gina, we have Delilah Hampton at table one. We also have Janal Gada and Evan Harmon at table two. So afterwards, please meet our innovators and also come and bring your questions to these tables. So with that, I think again, you're in for a treat. We'll learn a lot in just a moment, and I'm gonna call up our first presenter. They'll introduce themselves from Oura, I believe, is our first presenter. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Annie Tilton. I'm Director of Clinical Outcomes Research at Oura. At Oura, our mission is to help empower people to understand their health through continuous science-backed insights drawn from the most researched wearables in the world, one of the most researched wearables in the world, the Oura Ring. I lead our clinical outcomes research team, where we focus on validating Oura's physiologic signals and translating them into meaningful health metrics that can support both individuals and clinicians. Our work spans sleep, stress, metabolic health, cardiovascular function, and others, and increasingly explores how continuous data can complement traditional clinical measures. At the heart of this work is a simple goal: to translate everyday signals into insights that can improve outcomes and advance preventative care. If we look back, many major leaps in medicine have been driven by innovation in measurement tools, from the ECG to the stethoscope to DNA sequencing. Wearables represent the next chapter in that story. They extend measurement beyond the clinic into everyday life, offering a continuous multimodal view of human physiology. With Oura, sensors capture raw signals like photoplasmography or PPG, the same pulse wave used in clinical oximetry, and transform them into insights on sleep, recovery, and cardiovascular health. Much like the invention of the X-ray allowed us to see inside the body, wearables let us see between visits how stress, recovery, and lifestyle dynamically shape health over time. For decades, cardiovascular health has been defined by periodic point-in-time measures, a blood pressure in clinic, a lab test, or a single ECG. But physiology doesn't stop between appointments. With continuous data, we can begin to detect subtle shifts, changes in heart rate variability, temperature, or vascular tone that may precede clinical symptoms by days or even weeks. That's the frontier we're exploring at Oura, translating continuous real-world signals into actionable, clinically relevant insights that support prevention and early intervention. Oura has now been used in over 200 peer-reviewed studies globally, spanning sleep and circadian rhythm research, early illness detection, metabolic health, and recovery. We collaborate with institutions like UCSF, Harvard, Northwestern, and with digital health partners who are integrating Oura data into population health and preventative care models. What makes this research powerful is scale. With hundreds of thousands of users contributing continuous high-resolution data, we can explore questions that were previously impossible to answer in traditional studies. For example, we can now observe how vascular stiffness changes across pregnancy, measured through PPG-derived pulse wave velocity, or how sleep duration relates to arterial health across 500,000 individuals. Behind these advances are new analytical approaches. By applying deep learning models to millions of PPG waveforms, we can infer cardiovascular properties like pulse wave velocity and even cardiovascular age, a measure of vascular aging that diverges from chronological age. These methods allow us to map subtle physiologic patterns across populations and over time, all from non-invasive everyday data. This opens exciting new opportunities, studying how behaviors and recovery patterns shape cardiovascular health, identifying early risk signals, and tailoring prevention strategies before disease takes hold. Ultimately, our vision is to bridge the gap between consumer and clinical data, helping researchers, clinicians, and individuals alike harness real-world insights to better understand human physiology outside the lab or clinic. By combining the precision of AI with the accessibility of wearables, we can democratize data collection, accelerate discovery, and make preventative health truly scalable. Thank you for having us, and I'm looking forward to hearing your perspectives on how technologies like these can help transform cardiovascular care during the roundtable. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Schorre. I'm a respiratory therapist and the director of Cardiopulmonary and Emergency Management at Huntsville Memorial Hospital, a rural hospital in East Texas, approximately 60 miles north of some of the world's most renowned and innovative healthcare systems. Huntsville Memorial Hospital was founded in 1927 as a community hospital of Walker County, Texas. Today, we are a 123-bed acute care facility with segregated offender and community care units in both our emergency department and the inpatient setting. Huntsville Memorial Hospital has the mission to care for our community with compassion, integrity, and excellence, and we serve a diverse and challenging patient population with limited incomes, a high poverty rate, 7 state prisons, and a large university student base. We had an in-depth review of 24 months worth of emergency room transfers from our ER, and a challenge was given to us in March in 2024 to decrease these transfers from our ER due to limited access to neurodiagnostics, specifically EEG care. Before our rapid EEG program implementation, every patient needing EEG services was transferred, approximately 1 hour away or more from us. These transfers not only cost the hospital needed revenue, but they also delayed diagnosis and treatment and took patients away from their community and their families. An average cost to a family for these transfers is around $200, and that's not counting the emotional toll that it took on them. This amount includes time lost from work, as well as travel and meal expenses. Many people in our community don't have these funds. The solution that we implemented for our rapid EEG device program was needed to be an existing workflow while limiting capital expenses and adding additional specialized personnel. Through research and trialing different technologies on the market, we chose the Zeto 1 rapid EEG device. This full montage rapid EEG solution is very easy to use, it's easy to integrate into our existing respiratory care workflow, and has remote access capabilities for our remote epileptologists to view studies live when needed and allow for interpretation of studies after they have been concluded. In less than 3 months, we went from a device decision to a go-live implementation for our solution. On December 16, 2024, Huntsville Memorial Hospital went live with our rapid EEG program. After 6 months of deployment, we were able to retain 44 admissions that would have otherwise transferred from our facility from our community. This means not only capturing the much needed revenue for our rural hospital, But more importantly, patients were able to stay close to home, close to their family, and reduce the financial and emotional burdens that these transfers would have put on them. Keeping our patients local improves the continuity of care at discharge, as our case managers know our local facilities and also the resources that we have available to patients. It also allows for families to be involved and advocate for their loved ones because they can be at their bedside. It helps speed up the diagnosis and treatment for any of the ailments that they have, and it strengthens the trust that we have between Huntsville Memorial Hospital and the community that we are proud to serve. This program is a great program for our facility. It's something that all rural hospitals should look into to help keep people local, to reduce the amount of transfers out of their facility, and to help increase the revenue generated from these admissions. And so we're happy to represent Zeto today, as well as Huntsville Memorial Hospital.
Thanks. Magically appeared. Hi everybody, my name is Geoff Strange. I'm Professor of Medicine at the University of Sydney, Australia. I'm here representing EchoIQ presenting these data. All right, so our job really is to solve for the problem of structural heart disease. And that's really the whole endeavor that we've been working toward. And really, just from a disclosure perspective, really what we're trying to do here is to understand the parameter-based measurement data that we use every day clinically and how we can take all of that multidimensional information and build a single digital fingerprint of what's happening in the heart for that particular patient's structural heart disease. So this is across a number of different components of both systolic and diastolic function, across valvular heart disease, tricuspid, mitral, and aortic stenosis. What we've done is we've trained a neural network in a modified mixture density model, and we've taken all of those measurements points, we've put it through an imputation model, we've built that digital fingerprint for that patient. This comes from 1,077,000 echo studies, and we've trained this model to be able to detect severe aortic stenosis in this case. And when we've validated that in about 200,000 individuals, the area under the receiver operating characteristic curve is highly sensitive at 0.986. And when we've taken that outcome to determine the severity of severe aortic stenosis and put it back into our mortality-based data set, we're able to determine that the risk stratification of that artificial intelligence model is able to predict outcomes based on a low, medium, and high probability risk strata for those patients. And this product, for the first one that we've been bringing to market, is now FDA approved. So we've taken this same data that was based on this multi-centric parameter set out of Australia, and we've validated that at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. And not only have we validated this, we've had a comprehensive adjustment for all of the potential confounding comorbidities across demographic, the clinical profile. So that includes, of course, renal function and the way that the heart responds with the brain natriuretic peptide. We've looked at causality from an etiological perspective of the relationship between hypertension, coronary artery disease, etc. We've looked at that in conjunction with all of the pharmacotherapeutic strategies that have been having, and of course all of those complex interventions that happen for this patient population. And even in that setting, we're able to get almost an identical outcome. The area under the receiver operating characteristic curve for this study was 0.987. And you can see that the risk stratification, although this was an in-hospital patient population, was again able to risk stratify for these patients, allowing this decision support software to be at the fingertips of the cardiologist when they're reporting their echo to ensure that we can close the gap in those patients that are currently not being diagnosed. A really interesting finding out of another study where we've looked at 21,000 consecutive studies across 2 tertiary referral centers was this sex-based diagnostic disparity. And that is that that females in this population were under-recognized compared to their male counterparts. And you can see here that that represented a nearly 80% less likely to be diagnosed accurately with the human compared to the artificial intelligence. In this case, deploying the AI in a blinded fashion restored that equity in gender. And so Echo, like I said before, solved that particular dilemma. So this is an easily deployable system. It's a light touch. It can sit inside the DICOM. We've got another product that we work with that's called EchoIQ Connect, and it can actually listen for every single test that comes in. It then drags the data up into the cloud. We process it. This processing takes about 2 seconds. So this is real-time in-workflow reporting back to the center. This can be incorporated into the reporting software or separately at the top of the DICOM stack. These are the outputs that we get back, and these give you that risk stratification, as I said. It's color coordinated like a traffic light system that makes it easy to interpret for the clinicians as they're reporting their echo in real time. And we're moving on to other forms of structural heart disease. This was some data that we published with my colleague, Professor David Playford, recently in JACC Advances, which shows very clearly that we take this same phenomena of this multi-dimensional measurement-based system. We can take the changes that happen structurally in both systole and diastole, and we can then look at from a low probability output to the highest probability output. You can see here that there's an incremental increase in the prediction of 1 and 5-year mortality rates across this population. There's a second study that we've just completed that's not on the slides here that shows we're able to predict hospitalization 5 years in advance based on the index echo. And this really gives us really discrete and complementary multidimensional variables that allows us to interpret the echo in a way that we previously haven't been able to do. So with that, I'm just going to leave you with a couple of points that we think that this is highly accurate. It's certainly better than the human, 72% increase in the yield for diagnosis. It restores that gender and other unconscious hemodynamic biases. We're solving for heart failure as well, which, as we know, is the #1 cause of hospitalization for patients over the age of 65 in the Western world. It's in workflow, and our first product's FDA approved. Thanks very much for your attention.
Good morning. My name is Dan Cantillon. I am the Chief Medical Officer from Masimo. We are a medical device company based in Irvine, California. And I am a cardiologist by background, former Cleveland Clinic, before I joined Masimo. And what I'm here to talk about today is much bigger than any sensor, any algorithm, any technology. What I'm here to discuss with you all is how we, as a health tech, med tech community, can leverage our technology and our capabilities for innovation to better serve the needs of patients that have been historically underrepresented and underserved. And I want to start out with a story. During the pandemic, you all may recall that there were some concerns with pulse oximeters. We are the largest manufacturer of pulse oximeters in the world. And there were some concerns about individuals with darker skin tone who were being served outside the hospital, that the blood oxygen levels were being dangerously overestimated by their pulse oximeters. There was a study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine that was a retrospective study that lumped a lot of data from different pulse oximeter manufacturers together and found that there was a concern for what's called occult hypoxemia, where the SpO2 value was reading artificially higher and that patient was dangerously desaturating, and that was being masked, and that was leading to adverse outcomes. So I'm here to talk about not just why we are different and why we are better, but how we are elevating that conversation about concerns of racial bias in pulse oximetry to how we as a company that specializes in non-invasive monitoring solutions and algorithms to leverage that technology to better serve the needs of, again, historically underserved patients. And I'm not just talking about by race, but I'm also talking about by sex. I'm talking about rural versus urban. As you all know, there are many troubling healthcare outcome disparities in just about every category of cardiovascular disease, whether that's heart failure, post-myocardial infarction, cardiac rehab, cardiobstetrics. And so those are the things that we as an innovative community need to solve for. And so we're talking about advancing health equity through innovation, the role of technology in mitigating outcome disparities. So a little bit more about us. We're a global company. We serve proudly in 150 countries all over the world and hundreds of millions of patients globally as we're speaking right now including most of your hospitals of those that are represented in this space. We serve all 10 of the top 10 U.S. hospitals as the primary pulse oximetry vendor. And what makes our studies and what makes our technology different is we say, look, you don't have to take our word for it. Take us to your sickest patient, because what we have the ability with our oximeters to do is to read under the most challenging conditions, which is through motion, low perfusion, and across a plurality of skin tones. Those neonates in the NICU, they can't be told to hold still to make their measurement. They're moving around, and it's important with our proprietary signal processing parallel engines. We lock in on that signal of the arterial saturation. We read it through the corrupting signals of noise, artifact, signal that's coming through bones, soft tissues, the venous blood, and we don't let that go and we hold on to it. We also have a dynamic control on our emitter and our detector. So if we're reading on a patient that's got a darker skin tone, we can automatically push more current through that emitter, and we can adjust the gain on our detector to make sure that that signal's amplified appropriately to read through that darker skin where there's more light absorption going on. So I tell people it's kind of like a car that has an automatic transmission. You step on the gas, you don't think about the fact that it's changing gears, but it's making those adjustments so that you get a smooth ride. Our pulse oximeters, when you line them up and tape them up and plug it in, that's what it's doing. It's calibrating that light signal to the perfusion state and also to their skin tone. Now, historically, this is not new to Masimo. This company was founded in 1989 by Joe Chiani out of his garage in San Diego. And from the day that Masimo was founded to present day, we have always tested our devices in equal numbers of individuals with dark and light skin tone, because we recognized whether it's our pulse oximeters on the finger or our cerebral oximeters on the brain, they have to perform across a plurality of skin tones so that you all can use this technology to serve the needs of the diverse patient populations in your communities. And I was just going to mention, we go well beyond what the FDA requires, which is a very, very low standard in terms of testing and validation. So as we look to the future, going beyond pulse oximetry, it's really about using all the non-invasive sensors that we have within our portfolio, the optical sensors, the acoustic sensors, electrical sensors, gyro accelerometers, capturing that human data accurately, aggregating it together, and getting away from the world of dumb alarms, which is heart rate high, heart rate low, SpO2 low, and into true disease detection enabled by AI algorithms, such as your patient has atrial fibrillation, your patient has sepsis, your patient is showing signs of opiate-induced respiratory depression. And so that's what we believe in. We believe that the future is in wearables, and it's in AI-enabled sensors and AI-enabled care. So these are the algorithms that we have either developed or are under development. The opiate-induced respiratory depression algorithm that I mentioned a moment ago, that was a de novo clearance that we got in the AI category with the FDA. We're very proud of that. And the AFib PPG-based detection is right on its heels. You all may know that with many consumer wearables, there's that capability to detect AFib from the PPG. We feel, as the industry leader for pulse oximetry, we ought to be able to tell you whether your patient is in AFib based on the PPG signal inside the hospital. So that's what we're going to be bringing to the market next year. And as I mentioned, sepsis detection, very, very important cause of morbidity and mortality in hospitals all over the globe. And so as we look to leverage our technology to serve the needs of historically underserved patients, we've partnered with the American Heart Association to look for demonstration projects, and these are concepts of some areas where we think our technology can make a difference. Equal AFib is a study that is designed to demonstrate the proof of concept to reduce AFib detection disparities between blacks and Caucasians, which is a current concern, as an underdiagnosis of atrial fibrillation can lead to stroke, as we all know. With respect to reducing maternal morbidity, the Momentum study, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than Caucasians. And then in the area of brain health, the SAFE-ED study, looking at our cerebral oximetry to more accurately capture and represent the state of oxygen saturation in the brain, of a diverse patient population. So we believe that this is just the beginning. And if you look at the clinical application across that continuum of care in the hospital, going from curb to curb, the time the patient enters the hospital to the time they leave it, our solution, our optical sensors, our SET technology, our rainbow pulse coax, which can read hemoglobin within 1 gram per deciliter accuracy, our LIDCO hemodynamics, which plugs into any arterial line that comes off your shelf and can give you cardiac output, give you stroke volume variability, systemic vascular resistance, all non-invasively. Brain monitoring, which delivers the saturation in the brain as well as the processed EEG signal for depth of sedation and current level of consciousness. And then our capnography, which is going to give those patients that end tidal CO2. So I want to thank you all for your attention. Please visit the booth and join us in this conversation of how we can advance health equity through technology and innovation. Thank you.
It's easy. Hello, everyone. My name's Steve Ennen. I am a recovering academic who has dedicated the rest of my career to advancing outcomes through AI, which is why I ended up with Amplity. If you don't know Amplity, without being commercial, we've been around 40 years with commercialization support. Also insights through a number of different means, one of which is called Answer Why, which we're going to talk about today. Answer Why is essentially an insights database compiled of 80 million records of HCPs dictating their experiences with their patients during examination or immediately after examination. This is not a panel. This is actually HCPs using this technique to go about their regular care, and it helps them understand the context of the patient. But what we did for the purpose of today is we used our large language models who have been at work for more than 20 years to understand what are some of the challenges that folks who are practitioners in cardiology or other specialty areas might be facing in general. Are there any practitioners in the audience? Possibly, yeah. So are you absolutely 100% certain about every decision you make in the course of an examination? Possibly. What we saw yesterday as cardiologists faced off against AI won, right? But what was most interesting about this to us, especially as practitioners in large language models and AI, was the debate, the uncertainty, those gaps in knowledge about what was going on. We asked a subset of our database, which is built of 155,000 healthcare professionals, what are some of the doubts that you have in the course of your day-to-day examination? Listening to the HCPs as they go about their daily practice. Remember, this is not a panel. This is just folks like you. We understood complexity, uncertainty of diagnostic ambiguity, and certainly the patient complexity drive a lot of the uncertainty going on and some of the gaps in knowledge in care. Absolutely on stage yesterday when the cardiologists and the AI were facing off accordingly. So what we're thinking about here is, now, this may not be groundbreaking, but recognize we just took this from about 4,000 healthcare professionals as they talked about the decision making in the cardiological environment. If we scale this, if we work this in particular with AHA and others in a collaborative environment, we could literally understand how to fill some of these knowledge gaps going forward. What can we do to build out educational programs? What can we do to really advance care by understanding at scale those gaps in knowledge, those uncertainties voiced by HCPs? We're very grateful to be a part of AHA. We're brand new in the Innovators Network. We're thrilled about the possibility of collaboration in a lot of areas, but as importantly, we're thrilled about the fact that we can actually help close some of these knowledge gaps and advance care across the board. So when we said to our large language models who are examining these 4,000 or so HCPs, what is it that we can do better to make you more comfortable with the decisions, make you more comfortable with the diagnoses that you have, and bring forth that gap in care, or fill that gap in care? Some of these, again, may be common knowledge to you, but actually what this does is it gives us fuel to build that curricula. It gives us fuel to understand the messaging. We work a lot in the pharmaceutical space where people are trying to understand how to introduce new treatments that are clinically superior to existing treatments. And what are the headwinds that we find going forward with it? How can we communicate hesitation on the part of the practitioner? How can we reduce that diagnostic uncertainty? I've seen wonderful science around here that can really get deep into the diagnostic technology and analyze great volumes of data, but how do we communicate those advantages to HCPs going forward? How can we clearly identify the benefits of our technology or treatment patterns going forward? This is what large language models have the power to do right now when they're trained on the proper sets. Yesterday's group of cardiologists were going against ChatGPT. It's a wild, wild west. But if we start to put together curated data sets, organized according to specialty area, organized according to region, organized according to demographics, however we want to look at that, we can start to really tailor the messaging and fill some of those gaps that are going forward. So what we did in a previous study with one of our clients is had some challenges introducing a drug for AFib, right? And some of those challenges were just baffling to them. Why aren't we picking up? We get some traction, and then there's a lot of discontinuation out there. Why? We're clinically superior. So what we did, and this is a different subset of folks, we started to examine roughly 2,000 patients who were involved in this drug. Wait, I'm sorry. Actually 200,000 patients who were taking this drug to understand why were some drugs being embraced and why were some being discontinued, especially the new entrant, which had obviously a smaller N, as you see right here. Well, the graphs over here on the right, side effects were clearly the driving force. The types of side effects are mentioned over here to just to the side. Cost and insurance plays a tremendous role going forward, and some of you say, well, I have patients that have issues with cost and insurance. But now let's think about how we close those gaps in care. We're looking at a national scale. What impact does cost and insurance have on our treatment choices? What impact does side effects have when we're trying to introduce new treatments? What impact do old habits have when it comes to physicians treating in a unique way? There's all kinds of great technology out there to analyze tests, but have we been able to overcome the gaps in knowledge by analyzing the practitioners themselves, which is one area that we feel is very, very important on the frontier to go forward and say, this is what we understand to be those areas of knowledge that we can fill better as a group as we start to understand the advances in care and understand the best way to communicate those advances and offer education. We're happy to talk about this. We've been doing this particular technology for 20 years. Our understanding of HCPs, their rationale, and their behavior behind all of these challenges is right there in front of us because it's literally coming from the mouths of the HCPs as they go through their day-to-day practice. We're happy to talk with you a little bit more about this particular situation. And of course, we're always open for queries through amplity.com. And that's my name, email, and phone number. We're happy to talk you through this because it's important to us that we can advance care by understanding what the challenges are professionals like you are facing. Thank you.
Is there a clicker? Sorry, that's it there? Thanks. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Opauszky. I'm the CEO at Sparrow BioAcoustics. There we go. Today we're going to talk a little bit about valvular heart disease, structural and rhythmic anomalies of the heart. Our particular obsession is detecting these early and detecting them at population levels. As recently as 2 weeks ago at TCT, new papers on preview valve came out and continue to show us that in the older adult population, structural heart disease continues to increase in prevalence, or our understanding of its prevalence is growing, including the disparities and the undiagnosed or underdiagnosed populations. We treat this as a population level issue that requires population level solutions. Our expertise is formally in sound, in bioacoustics. 200 years of auscultation has taught us that there are over 90 conditions, both cardiac and pulmonary, that can be detected, ruled out, or measured for severity in some form or another. Sound is diagnostically extremely rich. It is the energy given off by our functioning organs, and we can read it and we can understand it. Of course, there are barriers. The limitations in human hearing is the biggest one. Some of the most clinically important sounds are at the very edge of human hearing. There are limitations in agreement between one set of ears and another. There are limitations because the level of training required for traditional auscultation as a screening method is quite large. And so in many places it's been in decline. But there's another barrier. The other barrier is that a clinician or an expert, the patient, and some form of equipment need to be in the same proximity. At the very least, you have to have equipment and a patient in the same place, or a clinician available to read or deal with the information. These barriers are access barriers, and they prevent population-level screening. We've approached these from two perspectives. The first is to deal with the subjectivity and to enhance the specificity and sensitivity of using sound to detect structural heart disease. We developed algorithms that can detect heart murmurs, that can detect arrhythmias, and now we're going deeper, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, to detect specific types of structural diseases like aortic stenosis. We're not just interested in progressed disease, we're concerned with moderate and even early disease. That's where we want to catch it. That's what we want to listen for. The data set we use to build this is arguably one of the largest in the world. It's large not just because we needed to train it to do specific things, but it's large because it had to contain at least 40 or 50 different pathologies. So you're not just looking for aortic stenosis in sound. You're looking for how to separate it from mitral regurgitation or from other types of structural issues and simultaneous arrhythmias. The second thing we did was we got rid of the device. We wanted to make it entirely downloadable so that any practitioner, any nurse, any patient can access this power instantly through a simple download on the App Store. We trained the AI not just to work on one device, we trained it to work on generic devices, and it worked so well that we could make it a downloadable product on a common iPhone. This has allowed us to put out tens of thousands of units even in the early days, and develop some extremely interesting insights into how people can use this product, both patients at home, clinicians, people in remote areas. It's a medically cleared Class 2 device in Canada and the United States. It is currently commercially available, and we are in the process of working with some of the foremost networks in, excuse me, very dry. Some of the foremost networks in the United States and Canada to prove out its efficacy in clinical and extraclinical environments. A quick note on sensitivity and recall. Naturally, it's important to go after the right statistical models when you're looking at population level concerns. Murmur detection itself needs to be extremely sensitive and highly specific. The detection specifically after that for things like structural murmurs and aortic stenosis need to follow. At the same time, we are very concerned with making sure that we can also detect moderate disease as well with a good degree of sensitivity. That's the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, where I'm supposed to be in two places at the same time. But I want you to think, how long have we had EKG technology? And it's been about 150 years. Just last year was the Nobel Prize to Eindhoven, who, of course, we now know the Eindhoven's triangle. Fast forward, what innovation have we had? And I would argue that it's actually not the tech, but it's flipping the script and having patient-centric care. That's the innovation, because everything we've talked about has really been leveling up health systems and how we own the devices. So as we kind of think through real-world applications of AI, I think you need to push this beyond our brick and mortar buildings and out to the patient. And that's what I would like to talk about. And honestly, I forgot where this was. So here we go. I don't know if I have any real or clinical applications. Okay, so what is the current state of ECG use? Sorry, I'm a wanderer, and so maybe I'll just kind of hold this right here. Look, there are challenges because anything that we have talked about today, health systems own. You own as companies, but the patients are locked out of access. So traditional ECG, and this is kind of why I argue about participation physical exam ECGs, is there's a lot of variants of normal. From provider to provider, we may or may not know what's going on that EKG. So learning it, running it through AI, and developing technology that helps us to interpret is very helpful. And I would argue that's across everything. You've heard it today. So AI-enhanced ECG has a lot of advantage to it, and it can improve clinical decision-making. Yay, I can now move around. Maybe. Can I? Oh, yes, I can move around. So improve clinical decision-making from our side, from the clinic side. But that's really not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about AliveCor, which I use a lot in my clinic because patients are purchasing them. And they own that device. They own the information. And so, I wanted to show this picture because full disclosure, I am at Intermountain Health. I forgot to say that. And I don't work at AliveCor Cardia, but I have partnered with them in terms of two different studies, St. Louis and St. Louis 2, where we're looking at MI detection. And this was, if you remember what an iPod looks like, you can see these alligator clips, and I've shown how we had to develop 9 different leads in order to bring forth that 12 lead. No way that a patient's going to do that, I promise you. It was hard enough for our team to figure that out. And then, of course, they have their 12 lead now that's out there. But I love the Cardia device, 6 lead, the mobile, the credit card, all those kind of things, because that is actually what the patient has. So let me take you back to a time, because it exists right now, where in my clinic I have 3 to 4 clinicians, physicians, PAs, seeing patients in 5 different rooms. And we have 2 to 3 supporting MAs, 1 EKG machine. And if you're trying to use this in clinic, good luck. We don't know where the EKG machine is. It has to be carted back and forth. You have to have an MA that's placing this on a patient, and then they're taken out of circulation from rooming patients. And then we have to take a look at that EKG, of course, interpret it, et cetera. And so it's not always available. We don't have an MA always available, but that's clinic mess, right? That's a clinic mess. What I've partnered with my patients for is they own the device, FDA cleared for detection of arrhythmias. Now, of course, it's a little bit different when you're talking about acute coronary syndrome versus an arrhythmia like AFib, but nonetheless, this is where I think the innovation is. The patient owns the device, they get the information, and what I love is that when you can just place 2 fingers on a little credit card or a little stick of gum, our frail patients can do that. Sure, you would say to yourself, Viet, what about the iPhone, the Android, whatever? I can tell you that most of my patients are probably more savvy than I am at this point in being able to use their phones. So don't discount them and their age. They are able to do this. So I wanted to kind of show you, this is a report from the 12 lead. Of course, it's not the single lead 30-second EKG, but you can see that there's a 12 lead on the right, and then on the left is that same patient, but using their 12-lead device from AliveCor. So the algorithm is very sound. There's only 5 points of contact, and you're able to generate the entire 12-lead, including Einthoven's calculations and being able to generate that. So it's here, and we know it. I'm not going to talk about how it's derived, what the AI is, but really the important part for me is being able to recognize that these real-world clinical applications, they're here. We already have cloud services. We already have patients with these devices. What we need to do is really innovate how that connects. They own that information. How do we work with them and collaborate with those patients? So here's an appendix of things. I just wanted to go through here. I was just jealous, I think, that everyone else had more slides than me. But so this is how, you know, the 12 lead is set up with those 5 points of contact. I think I'll end with this thought for everyone. The innovation, you will get the technology. You're doing the things, and I love the idea of listening in and being able to understand what we perceive as clinicians and what the patients do, and then what AI is doing. But we have to get that to the patient side of the fence. They have to be able to do this and have that information on their own. And that's what I like about having the AliveCor platform and also the devices. So not only are we hoping to change care at the point of care, but at the point of life where they live. So thank you.
Okay, I want to take one more round of applause for all of our presenters today. What a fantastic session.